Season 1 is all about that dental school student or that new dental school grad or that transitioning dentist, pretty much giving the financial keys to success now that you're in a transition period. So let's go and hop into this episode, and we hope that you enjoy it. Welcome to the Generational Dental Wealth Podcast. We're here with Kingsley Ifedi, CPA.
Dr. Jermaine Ifedi.
Awesome. So today is going to be a great episode. We're pretty much in this series where we're talking to new grads, people that are transitioning. We want to just give you the resources and tools to make sure that you are stepping into that next phase of life the right way. All right. So today we'll be going through a new dental grad checklist, giving you those keys. But before we hop into it, we always like to get a quick discussion in fantasy football, man. What's going on?
Don't go there, man. See, listen, he gave me no heads up he was going to go here today. All right, so week 1, tough battle, but he beat me. All right, Team Virtual Bay, shout out to the both of them. They beat us, and it's okay. It's all right. Beginner's luck. Yep. So he's undefeated right now, and we haven't won a game on our side. And I'm playing my other brother's team right now, and we're losing. So I'm just taking L's to my bro. To be honest, I should never brought them into the league. Should never brought them into the league.
Yeah, man.
See what happens when you bring your loved ones in to a safe space. They come in and they wreck the whole thing, man.
Yeah, man. Well, I really hope that my team can keep up the heat. You know, we have a few injuries, so we're gonna see how it all shakes up. You know, NFL season's long, man. NFL season's long.
I want to stress beginner's luck. All right, and this happens in business. This happens in fantasy football. This happens in a lot of different areas. I'm sure everybody ever heard of the honeymoon phase, right, in a relationship. In the beginning, when everything is so sweet, right? That's what he's enjoying right now in fantasy football. We're defending champions, and 2 years ago, we came in second place. So we've been here, we've done this, you know, so.
Well, we're going to see how it shakes out, man. But hopping straight into it, as far as the checklist for new dental grads, really want to just start just kind of picking your mind. I'll kind of take off my CPA hat off of this episode and kind of give some of the insight. You know, especially me graduating from undergrad, graduating from the master's. It was scary stepping into the work space, but you know, fortunately, I had mentors, I had brothers, I had people that had already been in the space, and had already kind of been in the CPA space personally for a few years. So it wasn't as scary for me, but I know for a new dentist that's getting out into the workspace, you know, things can be quite scary. So the first thing here, as far as on the checklist, ensuring that your dental license has been properly processed and posted to the NC Dental Board. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So for us, we're here in North Carolina, so it'd be the NC Dental Board here. But in reality, the biggest thing is just because you have graduated does not mean you can practice, right? And most people who are practicing know that because you have to actually apply to whatever your state is to actually get that. But one thing that most people don't understand is it has to be posted to your state dental board before you can actually start practicing here in North Carolina. Okay. So as far as any new grads and any individual who is looking into practicing in a different state, throughout that entire process, as many know here, it takes some time. It's not something you just put in your application and it's turned over in a week or two. Yeah. In North Carolina, I remember they used to tell us give it at least 2 months. Mentally, don't start putting in your start date until about 2 months out, just because that's usually how backed up things are. There are some different ways and techniques you can use to get your stuff processed quicker if you're more involved in the process. But some people want to take that 2 months and vacation a little bit, you know, get their mind clear after a 4-year journey before they move into the next part of their journey, which is actually working. So for myself, after I graduated, within 3 weeks, I was already practicing. We graduated that Friday. That Monday, I got my transcript officially from UNC, and I drove straight up to the NC Dental Board. Yeah. I said, man, listen, I don't really got time to play around with this thing. You know what I'm saying? We got big plans. We got some things we got to do. You know, I got a fiance I got to take care of. It's a practice we need to start. You got, different contractors already. We need you in the office. We need you in the office. So I drove straight up there, got the thing. So it got processed about a month quicker than it's supposed to. So to God be the glory on that. And we started working.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. Just make sure you get it in early. And one piece of advice I would give people is, I would go ahead and apply to, if you plan on traveling a little bit more. If you don't plan on traveling, don't worry about this. But if you plan on traveling, apply to your neighboring states, meaning the states that neighbor you at least 1 to 2. So for myself, I'm licensed in multiple states. But if I would have done it as a new grad, it would have been easier Because I didn't do it as a new grad, I had to get letters of recommendation from other dentists who practice in the state and other hurdles you have to go through. But if you're doing this as a new grad, it would be very, very high. I wish somebody told me this, right? And that's what this entire checklist is about. It has information that we wish we were told. Now we can tell you to make your process simpler. So again, let's say if you're in North Carolina, for instance, right? Definitely think about at least South Carolina and possibly Virginia. Go ahead and get duly licensed so now you can accept contracts in multiple states.
Yeah, and it's sort of similar in the CPA world, going to the state board, making sure your credential, or going to the state board, making sure your license and everything is up to date there, and just making sure that you're ahead of the game and not reactive, but being proactive about that.
How long did it take y'all? Like, sometimes dental professionals, we get curious about other professions. So
yeah. So pretty much
CPA. How long did that take?
Yeah, so dealing with the NC State Board of Examiners for the CPA, pretty much it took about. It really didn't take too long. It took about a month. From the time, but it is a pretty lengthy packet. I mean, you have to include all the exam scores that you took. You have to include all the work experience. You have to include the ethics exams that you did. So it's pretty much like a 30-page packet you have to mail off. I thought about, when you told me about that story, I thought about driving it up to Raleigh, but I said, you know what? I'm 2.5 hours now. I'm just gonna just wait for it to come in.
I'm driving up there.
Yeah, so it only took about a month. It didn't take too long. Second part of this checklist here, ensuring malpractice insurance start date coincides with your work start date. So pretty much talk to that, and why is that important?
Really, it's all your insurances. You want to make sure all your insurances align. See, people just think malpractice is a blank statement, right? Like, I have malpractice insurance. Like you have to choose a start date. The same way you have to choose a start date for your disability insurance. You have to choose a start date on our practice side, for practice coverage, for every type of insurance. It has to be written down on paper. What is the start date, right? Yeah. So it's important that, again, if you are going to take that 2-month vacation, right, don't pay for time that you're not going to actually be using that malpractice. Don't put your start date your graduation date. Put your start date where you expect it to be. Let's say if you graduate May 12th and you're going to wait 2 months, then July 12th is what you will be doing. You put that down as your start date. Now, I want to tell you, for most carriers, you can change that start date. So let's say if you tell them July 12th is my start date for my malpractice and my disability insurance, but I get my license on July 1st, right? You can go back to them and change it to July 1st or whatever your expected start date is going to be. But what I will say is don't start it too early out of like an unrealistic time frame, because you're going to be paying for every single day of that. Yeah. So it's just important to understand.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And, we talked about what do we want to let, new grads know before to get a head start, because many of them may be going into practice ownership. And malpractice is a pretty big deal. If you're going for certain loans, the banks are going to want to see that you have some type of malpractice insurance, because they want to make sure that they, with all cases, make sure that they can get their investment back, or get the money that they put within you back. So a lot of these things, right, it doesn't seem like it would have to do with you getting started, but we want to kind of start with the end in mind. We want to get ahead of the ball, so that when it is time for you to start your practice or do some different things, we don't have to now go back and figure some of these things out there, man.
And I do want to say that this is a new grad checklist, but really this is a dental graduate checklist. I mean, if you graduated 20 years ago or you graduated today, this entire thing is just creating clarity. Yep. That's all this is. Knowing what your dates are, knowing how to get things in, and not sitting back and being reactive to things, but going to your dental board, right? Knowing what date you're going to actually set up your malpractice. All we want to do is create that kind of clarity, so you know and you can take control of your fate within dentistry.
I'm with you, man. So part 3 of this here is applying for your NPI number. What is an NPI number? What does it even stand for? Go ahead and let me know that.
Your NPI number is an individualized number for different practitioners, right? It's not just for dentists. Nurse practitioners has NPIs. Medical doctors have NPIs. Pharmacists have NPIs. This is a nationalized way for them to keep track of all providers. Okay. But most people just think like an NPI number is not a real important number. It's actually a very important number. It's like your social security number as a practitioner. But I do want to go ahead and stratify even a little bit further. There are 2 types of NPI. There's a type 1 NPI and a type 2 NPI. I was told from the beginning, whenever you get your NPI number, if you're interested in starting a practice or interested in doing contracting, go ahead and get both NPIs up front. And again, this is information that, you know, I wish I received a little bit earlier because I did it after the fact, right? So I was told to do it. And I was like, if I got a little bit earlier, that could have been helpful. But go ahead and get both your NPIs if you already have your entity chosen out, meaning your name for your business. Yeah. So what happens is on my personal, my license as a dentist, I have an NPI type 1. Now, my entity as far as Empire is a type 2 entity. And think about it, right? Your type 1 entity can only really cover you, one person, right? Your type 2 entity can cover multiple practitioners underneath a building, right? So they need to know what is the location, like what is the business's NPI type 2. So that's just how you got to think about it. So just understand there are 2 different type of NPI. So when you do see applications that have type 1 or type 2, I want you to know the difference between them and understand that it's important to have both if you need both. But if you're going to be an associate, it's going to be completely okay for you to have an NPI type 1.
Yeah. And, you know, as your office manager, you know, especially at the beginning, I literally had to write the NPI number on my forehead. You know, like it was a number that is, you just can't run your practice. You just cannot deal with any insurances without that NPI number. I mean, that's the first thing they ask, you know, what is your name? What is your NPI? So these are really, really crucial and important numbers to make sure that you are practicing and that you can get into that flow without any hiccups, okay?
For most associates watching this, I never even really dealt with NPI early on. Like, you don't really deal with it. It's more of whoever's handling your billing, your credentialing. They're the ones who's dealing with more of the NPI. Once you start moving into more of the contracting world, you move more into the practice ownership world, you'll start seeing NPIs are going to be like, just like you said, you're going to have to memorize them just like you memorize any other number.
Awesome. Awesome. So part 4 here is applying for your DEA. Pretty much tell us a little bit about that. Looks like they need to go ahead and fill out that form 224. So 224, fill out an application, do some different things. It looks like there's a payment of about $880, something like that. You kind of talk to that process. What was your process going through that and applying for that DA number?
So I want to start and premise that if you don't plan on prescribing certain schedule of drugs, you won't really need a DEA number. But if you are going to prescribe, let's say analytics, basically things to calm patients down, sedatives, or you're going to prescribe narcotics, anything like that, you're going to need a DEA number. DEA number is not a statewide number. That's a federal number. That's, again, one of those numbers that stick with you, right? Yep. Some practitioners may not want to prescribe those particular drugs. Some practitioners will. So sometimes, in my opinion, it's better off to have it than to not have it. Mentally, I think about, okay, so if I say I'm never going to prescribe narcotics, but there's a patient who is in extreme pain and needs a higher level of drug, but now I don't even have access to go that route because I didn't want to pay the $888. That kind of puts me in a bind. So I would definitely say, listen, regardless if you think you're going to need if you're going to need a DEA number or not need it, at least get it for the first 3 years because it's renewed every 3 years. And then from there, you can make the decision for the next 3 years, right? So let's say you got it in year 1 and you never used it for 3 years, then you know, okay, I'm good. I don't think I need this. I don't think I need to renew. But as a new dentist, I don't know what I will need or what I don't need, especially as I'm traveling to different locations, starting to practice. I just don't know. So I'd rather be overcovered than undercovered. Exactly. That's how I always think about it. So with your DEA number, it is for, at the time of application for myself, it was $888. It's good for 3 years. It's a special number that you're going to have to definitely use and put on different applications. As you're even signing up for different insurances or whatever you're signing up for, people want to know your DEA number, and that's how it follows you to make sure that you're being responsible in the prescription of drugs.
All right, awesome. So the next step in this, step 5, looks like the credentialing process. What does that mean, and how can you go about that?
So you remember when we were first starting up Empire, man, it was like dealing with so many applications, making sure we were basically properly identified by all the different entities we needed to work with, right? Yeah. So credentialing is basically you letting whoever know that you want to work with them, right? Now, if you're credentialing specifically with an insurance, right, then you're letting an insurance know that I want to work with you, right? Or potentially want to work with you, because you can credential with an insurance company, but not actually go in network with them. You might be giving them your information so now you can work with them in an out-of-network type status, meaning you're submitting more of a W-9. I don't want to get into the details of all that, right? But basically, credentialing focuses mainly on identifying yourself to whoever you're going to work with particularly, right? So there's a program called the CAQH solution that the ADA offers. And this is a credentialing solution that allows you to put in your information into the computer, basically into their solution. And then from there, different insurance companies can pull your application. Before, it used to be done like you had to submit a full packet of applications to every insurance you wanted to work with. But gone are those days, right? Majority of different insurance companies work with this solution. So what happens is now we fill out 1 or 2 page release of information so they can pull your application from the database. And regardless if you're an associate or you're a travel dentist or you're a practice owner, that's what they're going to use to identify you and have your information, right? Different things that go into the packets are your DEA number, your NPI number, your license number, where have you practiced in the past, where you're currently practicing, what type of specialty are you. It has all your information in that packet. So you go in there, you fill it out once. And what happens is, even if you're an associate, you usually sign a piece of paper. When you usually start up an associateship, they're going to give you a lot of different pieces of paper from different insurance companies. So then they'll go ahead and package up for you and send it off to the different insurance companies. And then from there, these different insurance companies can pull your profile that way. So all it really does is speed up the process of credentialing. One thing you're going to notice is it's going to be a common theme of how can we speed up processes that have taken weeks and months at times. Things are definitely starting to get better and quicker.
So how long, you said weeks, how long does, let's say if you do want to get credentialed with, X and Y in insurance, how long do you, explain to me, do you do it, I would say, insurance company by insurance company, or are you saying that you can do it all at once and then you can do it in bulk? If you want to go get credentials with 10, so kind of explain that process.
So from an associate's perspective, you're not really going to worry about the credentialing process because usually whoever your company works with is who they work with. You don't really choose. Gotcha. You know what I mean? It's more of like, hey, here are the companies that we're in network with, we work with. We're going to get you credentialed with these different insurances, right? Now, depending on your kind of relationship with the different owner, you can in some cases negotiate on the front end what companies you do or don't want to work with, but that's a sticky ground to really move on. Like, especially if you're a newer grad, I probably wouldn't recommend it. But when you're further along and this type of insurance I don't like working with, you can state those kind of things, right? But let's say if you're more of a practice owner, you can credential individually with the different companies, right? But then there is strategy that goes into it. There's something called a third-party administrator, TPA, basically, and you can work with a whole umbrella of insurances by just credentialing with one insurance. Or you can work with them individually. So again, it's a lot of strategy that goes involved with it. You need to talk to a credentialing specialist to help craft a strategy that works for your particular practice. For us, we don't really work with a lot of insurances, so it was more of a going directly to the companies. And even we still had a credentialing specialist help us out with that. But again, it's a lot of strategy that goes into it, and understanding the demographic that you're in, understanding what kind of insurances are more prevalent in your particular area. But credentialing is literally a series in itself. The biggest things you need to know is majority of us are going to be using a CAQH solution offered by the ADA to get your application into the database. And then from there, different insurance companies pull your application from there. But if you still get another piece of paper for you to sign, that's completely normal. Definitely make sure you read it and get your own personal copy of it. But that's completely normal to make sure that people can pull all your different credentials.
Awesome. So the next step here, step 6, it looks like continuing education. And I'll kind of speak to that briefly, especially in the CPA world. Most professional boards, you're always going to have some type of yearly requirement to submit to the board, or at least have for your own records what you did to keep up your skill set, right? In dentistry, right? It may be the different CE courses you take. We call it CPE, continuing professional education, in the CPA world, and it can get pretty extensive. You definitely gotta kind of spread it out and make sure that you're doing it throughout the year, because if not, if you get into the deadline, I think our deadline is like the end of June. If you're getting to the end of the deadline, you're really pushing it, and you may not be able to get all your hours in. So kind of speak to that. in the dental world, what does that continuing education look like?
So for continuing education, there are some mandatory continuing educations, and then the majority of it is optional. For newer grads, there's a professional etiquette continuing education course that you have to complete here, at least here in the state of North Carolina. But then for most state boards, there is a hourly requirement that is going to be necessary, just like you already spoke upon, right? Now, to be honest with you, within dentistry, it should not be hard to reach your hourly requirement. Honestly, it should be harder not to reach your hourly requirement. You should be far and exceeding it because there's just so many different conferences that you can go to. There's so many online CEs you can get these days that if you're a part of any type of association, then you're going to get your hours pretty quickly. Yeah. Here in North Carolina, we're part of the Old North State Dental Society. And from there, we have biannual conferences. So we're able to now get our hours very, very, and pretty easily. And then as well as you and I, we do different business CEs, So even before we started to practice, I remember flying out to Phoenix with my office manager at the time, Don Gillespie, shout out to you, Don Ifedi now. We were able to go out there and get a lot of different CE on what practice management looks like, practice ownership looks like, right before we started the practice. So there are always so many different opportunities. The good thing is you can choose what you're interested in, Yeah. The beautiful thing about dentistry is there's so many different avenues of how you can move into. And then so basically you choose what you want to get CE in, and just make sure you document it properly. Usually they'll send you a certificate. They'll send you something that acknowledges that you were there at the education. And even if you don't get it at that time, when you're applying for your license, it is pretty easy to usually call them up and ask them, hey, can you send me a certificate that has my continuing education? Whoever the organizers are, they should usually keep that information for at least 2 to 3 years. So when it comes to CE, number one, again, as a new grad, map out how you want to go about your CE. Just like we talked about earlier, it's all about organization. If you know, hey, I'm not particularly strong in this area, get CE in it, okay? It's not about the CE that everybody calls popular. Hey, let's go learn about implants. Let's go learn about whatever it is like that. Those times will come. But believe it or not, the most important skill set, especially as dentists, young dentists, that you can get early on is your treatment planning presentation, and honestly, just your ability to deal with your team. Yeah. So just soft skills. So go into continual education to learn how to speak to your team, how to make sure you demand respect within your workplace. If for most people, your staff members are going to be older than you. How do you come in and be able to demand it, but in a very polite way, in a very respectful way, but let them know that you are the doctor here. And for us to move at the speed that we need to move at, there has to be a certain respect level amongst us, right? Yeah. There has to be the soft skills and understanding when you're presenting treatment to the patient that, hey, you're not here to dictate or try to guess how much somebody can afford. It's your job to present your best treatment plan to the patient, and from there, find solutions to help them get to that finish line.
Yeah, I think in any professional space, I think continuing education, to me personally, and I advise a lot of my clients, is that is one of the biggest hacks that you can do, especially when you're young in that space. It not only, like Doc said, gives you the opportunity to learn more, but it gives you the opportunity to go network and find other people that are doing what you're doing. Being a part of groups and getting the information, that will literally speed up your development years, like times 2. Me personally, I always try to make sure I find at least 2 to 3 in-person conferences for me to go and be around other CPAs. So I went to one in St. Louis earlier this year called Scaling New Heights. It was amazing. And then I go to another one typically each year in Dallas. That gives me the opportunity to not only learn more about how to help dentists and how to help clients, but it gives me the opportunity to be around other CPAs and maybe rub ideas, just like you said, soft skills, right? Just talking to them and maybe asking, hey, how do you handle this type of client situation? How do you do these things? And the next thing you know, right, I don't have to make those mistakes. I get that information up front, and I'm able to take that back. Last one to hear, 7.
My favorite.
And this, I was going to say this is my favorite too, is mentorship, right? What does that look like? What does that mean to you, Doc?
So one of the biggest thing for a new grad is mentorship. And this is the biggest thing for a 10-year doc. This is the biggest thing for a 30-year doc. There has to be mentorship, because realize dentistry is just one component of your life. And just because somebody can't mentor you in one area doesn't mean they can't provide help in another area. So for instance, for new grads, I always have a 3-step rule when it comes to mentorship, right? Number 1, find somebody who is a little bit ahead of you. maybe 2, 3, 5 years ahead of you, who is still in touch with a lot of the pain points that you currently share, but can also give you a little bit of insight ahead of what's coming. So you know, okay, all right, these are the things you have to deal with year 2, year 3, when contract renewals come up. Like, you can talk to them on a more personable level to get the kind of insights you need and build that kind of relationship with them, so you can be a little bit more vulnerable with somebody. So during the tougher times, you have somebody to really lean on. Number 2, you want to find somebody a few decades ahead of you. It could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, but somebody who is over the mountain, and they still have their own challenges they're dealing with as well, right? But somebody who you want to emulate your dental career to be similar to, right? I don't believe you should try to attempt to be anybody, but there are certain characteristics that exist in other docs that have made them successful. When you see a splash of gray hair, or when you see some very, a long Rolodex of 1,000 Google reviews, 500 Google reviews, and you see that this person's been doing it for a long time, let's not think just because we get the most high-tech degree in learning in our particular education that since we're learning the newer stuff that we're better than our more senior docs. Nah, if somebody's doing something for 20 years, there's something that they're doing that's working, right? So it's good to link up with a mentor who is 10 years ahead of you, 20 years ahead of you, 30 years ahead of you. So now they can give you the kind of insight that you cannot really appreciate because everything happens in cycles. So when somebody who has been through 2 cycles, right? Understand this, right? If somebody's been practicing for 20 to 30 years, they've already dealt with COVID, shutting down their business. They've already dealt with the 2008 housing market crash. They've already dealt with the .com bubble that happened in 2000, right? So they've already dealt with all of those different things that have occurred, and their business is still rolling. And that's what I'm telling you, like, so much goes into our career as dentists. And sometimes we just focus on the dentistry, not understanding that the market conditions around us affect our day to day. It affects the buying decisions of our particular patients, right? If we're going to present the biggest treatment plan and tell the patient, you got to get this thing done, but we're in the middle of the 2008 housing market crash, and nobody's able to sit down and teach you that, hey, understand that when money tightens up, unfortunately, dentistry is one of the areas that people cut back on first. So with our treatment plan, maybe we need to sit down and really have a better understanding of this person's economical condition to make sure we can present something to them, even if this is a 2-step treatment plan. Maybe we need to break this up into 2 different treatment plans. Number 1, we got to get them stabilized until they can afford the next treatment plan, put them on a payment plan for the next part, or we need to present the entire treatment plan, whatever it is like that. Again, we can't just treat people like they're just numbers. We got to actually take into consideration things that are going on around us and things that are currently happening in our dental climate. And then third, of the 3, and this is probably my favorite, is you have to find a mentee. And in mentorship, I feel like sometimes we seek, and we want, not understanding that to truly grasp the vital essence of mentorship, you have to be a mentor yourself. Because if not, how do you know how to communicate best with your mentor? How do you know the feeling of when your mentee does not follow up with you? That's the same thing your mentor is going through, right? So understanding that as you mentor, you will become a better mentee because you understand the dynamic of giving and getting, and you understand the dynamic of I'm busy, but I still need to take time and respond to this individual because I have stepped forward and said that I'm going to mentor this person. Yeah. So understand the dynamic of having somebody closer to you in age experience in their career, whether that's 3 years or 5 years, but somebody close enough to feel the same pain points you feel. Somebody 10, 20, 30 years ahead of you who has dealt with different type of market economical conditions that you have not personally experienced, right? Just because you graduated during COVID doesn't mean you experienced the COVID shutdown. And then last but not least, find a mentee, somebody you can put your arm around, somebody you can show that, hey, listen, if I made it to the finish line, you can make it to the finish line. And through becoming a mentor, you will become a better mentee.
Yeah. Awesome. And I really hope this, 7-step checklist was able to at least get you thinking about some different things, get you ahead of the game as you transition into, the world of dentistry and the day-to-day grind. So just pretty much want to recap everything quickly. The 7 steps here, just so we can summarize everything in one place. So first, go ahead and think about, as far as dental license, what do you need to do to make sure that you're properly licensed and everything is properly good to go there. Malpractice insurance, making sure that you have that coinciding with your work start date. Making sure the MPI number, everything is A-OK there. Same thing with your DA number, which is step 4. Step 5, right, beginning the credentialing process. Like Doc said, that can be a whole entire episode in itself. Step 6, continuing education. So important. Make sure that we're doing that each and every year. And then step 7, like we both said, which was our favorite, right? Finding a mentor, mentorship, and then also you being a mentor to somebody.
Yes.
So I think with those 7 steps, it'll at least get you having the ball rolling as you're graduating, as you're getting out here, and as you're making these new transitions.
Sure.
Yeah. Anything to add to that?
No, I mean, that's really good. I appreciate the recap on that, man. We covered a lot of great topics on this, and this is one that people are going to revisit as time goes on.
Yeah.
You know? Again, you don't have to be a new grad to go through this new grad checklist. Yeah. You could be 5 years out and just say, hey, have I hit these different steps? You could be 20 years out and don't have a mentor. Yeah. You could be 30 years out and don't have a mentee. Yeah. So there's something in this list for everybody. Definitely share it with somebody who is you find highly esteemed. As you continue to go out this process, and we're going to continue to visit this, especially as yearly the new grad classes come out, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So cool. And my last final thought as well, I always want to make sure I let everybody know, if you are listening to this audio via audio, there is a video format. We actually shoot these live in studio on video format. You can check those out either on Spotify podcasts, which I know some people don't have. If you don't have that, then YouTube podcasts as well. Head to our Team Financials YouTube page. You'll be able to find all of these different podcast shows within the video format, if that's what you choose to do. But I mean, that's all I have, and we'd love to see you next time on the Generational Dental Wealth Show.
Peace.
See ya.